outside Fort Collins, Colorado, two longwave transmitters broadcast the correct time to 50 million American wall clocks. The federal government pays $6 million a year. Your phone ignores them entirely. And those 50 million clocks include alarm clocks, oven clocks, classroom clocks, hospital clocks, the $15 Casio Wave Scepter your dad bought in 1998. All listening, every night, to a quiet Colorado hilltop where two transmitters quietly tell them what time it is. This is a story about a radio signal, which sounds boring because it is. But it's also a story about why your atomic wall clock corrects itself at 3 a.m., why Congress nearly defunded the entire operation in 2018, and why the United States, in 2026, in the year of our internet, is still running a 60-year-old broadcasting facility to serve a market segment that arguably should not still exist. So let's talk about how that happened. And spoiler, it has very little to do with clocks. In 1919, the U.S. National Bureau of Standards, which is today called NIST, switched on a radio station from Washington, D.C. and named it WWV. It broadcast a number of things, but mostly it broadcast the time, specific to the second, audible to anyone in the country with a shortwave receiver. The reason was, on paper, scientific. Time, broadcast precisely from a federal source, lets engineers and physicists and ham radio operators agree on what now actually is, which turns out to be the sort of thing you need before you can build a national power grid, or eventually, a continental missile defense network. In 1963, NIST turned on a second station, this one operating at 60 kilohertz on longwave, called WWVB, based at a quiet hilltop outside Fort Collins, Colorado. 3 years later, in December 1966, WWV moved to join it on that same hilltop, where the two stations have been broadcasting, more or less continuously, for the past 60 years. There is also a third station called WWVH on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. WWVH is a near-carbon copy of WWV, same frequencies, same content. The only difference is that WWV is read by a male voice and WWVH is read by a female one, so listeners can tell which signal is which when both arrive at once. The decision was made in 1948, and it has not been updated since because it works. Here is how it works. At the Fort Collins site, a SEZ atomic clock, physically present on the floor, traceable to NIST headquarters down the road in Boulder, generates a time signal that gets converted into a binary code, modulated onto a 60 kilohertz carrier wave, and pumped into two top-loaded helix antennas at 70 kilowatts. The signal then travels along the curvature of the Earth, weakens with distance, and reaches a coil antenna roughly the length of a paperclip, sitting inside whatever $15 wall clock you bought at Target. At 3 a.m., local time every night, the clock wakes up, listens for about a minute, and resets itself silently. You never know it happened. You'd probably be slightly insulted if you did, and the audience for this signal is somehow enormous. NIST's last public estimate in 2011 put the number of radio-controlled clocks and watches in the United States at more than 50 million. Not a few hobbyists. 50 million wall clocks, oven clocks, alarm clocks, bedside clocks, classroom clocks, hospital clocks, and wristwatches, all listening every night to one hilltop in Colorado. Most of these devices were sold for under $30 at big box stores. The owners never think about them, except twice a year, when daylight saving time skips them an hour automatically. Now, you might reasonably ask why this signal still exists, given that everything else in your house with a clock, your phone, your laptop, your fitness tracker, your car, gets time from somewhere else entirely. Cell phones use a system called NITZ, which is a time signal piggybacked on the cellular network. Laptops and phones on Wi-Fi use NTP, which queries time servers over the internet. GPS is a completely different system altogether. Its master time comes from the U.S. Naval Observatory, run out of Schriever Space Force Base, also in Colorado, but routed through satellites to the receivers in your phone and your car. None of these systems listens to WWVB. The Hilltop is talking to a different audience entirely. The cheap standalone clocks that have no internet, no cellular, no GPS receiver of any kind. And it turns out there are 50 million of them sitting in American houses refusing to die. In August 2018, the federal budget proposal for fiscal year 2019 included a line item that would have shut the whole thing down. All three stations, WWV, WWVB, and WWVH. The estimated savings to taxpayers, $6.3 million a year. The proposal made it through several drafts before, well, somebody noticed. The amateur radio community noticed first, then clock manufacturers, then a number of metrology professors at large research universities. The public comment period attracted thousands of submissions, many of them from people who had not previously been aware they held strong opinions about long-wave broadcasting. Congress restored the funding in the final 2019 budget. The Hilltop kept transmitting. Which leaves the obvious question, what actually happens if the Hilltop goes dark? The answer, it turns out, is somewhat reassuring, then somewhat less so. In April 2024, WWVB's antennas suffered a malfunction that knocked transmission power from 70 kilowatts down to about 30. This was a real outage. Half power for almost 6 months before it was fully restored that October. In a normal week, this kind of partial outage just means clocks at the edges of the coverage zone, Maine, Florida, Alaska, fail to sync and drift their normal 15 seconds a month until the signal returns. Most owners never noticed. The system in this sense is engineered to fail invisibly. The WWVB station manager, John Lowe, has a blunt answer for what this signal is actually still for. Quote, GPS does not penetrate into buildings, which is an obvious problem. End quote. A kitchen wall clock, 6 rooms deep, 2 stories of drywall and conduit between it and the sky, can still hear WWVB. The same clock cannot hear GPS. This is a real technical advantage, owned at the moment by exactly one piece of infrastructure in North America. So here's the deal. There is a hilltop outside Fort Collins where 2 longwave transmitters originally built in the 1960s are still broadcasting, every night, to 50 million wall clocks the average American does not know they own. The federal government still funds this. The signal still goes out, and every night, somewhere in your house, something, your microwave, your car dash, your bedside alarm, your spouse's wristwatch, quietly listens, corrects itself, and never tells you it did. By every reasonable measure, this thing should have been retired 30 years ago and replaced with an app. It is also apparently working perfectly tonight. The charming part, and the slightly alarming part, is that both of those things are simultaneously true. It remains a $6 million annual line item the federal budget continues to fund, mostly by not getting around to deciding otherwise. So tonight, when you walk past your kitchen wall clock at midnight and notice that it shows the correct second, take a second of your own to consider what just happened. That clock, sitting on your wall, is in conversation with a hilltop in Colorado that almost got shut down, broadcasting at 60 kilohertz on equipment with more in common with a 1940s vacuum tube radio than with anything in your phone. And somehow, in 2026, the signal still arrives, on time, every night, for free.